Good morning, everyone. Hello and happy Sunday. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining me this morning. Just give me a quick second while I get set up. And whilst I'm setting up, why don't you guys tell me where you're tuning in from and how your week has been? What have you been up to? And let's see. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So tell me what you guys have been up to and how your week has gone. Anything exciting, anything interesting happening, anything that you found particularly challenging, and all of the good stuff. Oh, okay, let's see who's tuning in this morning. Good morning, Pastor Shin. Good morning, Penny. Penny, I received your message. I will need a day or so to compose a appropriate response to very personal question, all right? So I have received your message and I just wanted to let you know that. Good morning, Liming. Thank you for joining us this morning. Before we get started on today's sharing, God, what have we been up to? Oh, you guys know, right, if you're tuning in from Malaysia, about the increase in COVID cases, active COVID cases. Was it 387, 378 yesterday? So I hope everyone's staying safe and taking the necessary precautions. Because 380 cases, active cases, that's a lot. So yeah, I hope you guys are staying safe, taking necessary precautions and not going out unnecessarily. And please wear your mask properly, not like below your nose, because then you might as well not wear a mask at all. What else is coming up? Oh yeah, don't know if you guys saw, there is the Pets Day Out, the next Pets Day Out at Kechara Forest Retreat, which is coming up on the 11th. So I'll see you guys there. And then earlier this week we had a meeting on the upcoming educational programs, excuse my pronunciation, educational programs for the year. So that's happening, the schedule's kind of been worked out already. We've got a lot of programs that are coming up. So yeah, keep your eyes peeled for that. For announcements related to that, because we do have a lot of activities planned over the weekends, mostly for over the year. All right, so that's all happening. And then we also had a meeting about the next stages of the San Rinpoche Relic Stupa project. So announcements will be made on the San Rinpoche Relic Stupa news group on Facebook. If you guys already have some time and you want to volunteer, we already do need help, especially with mantra rolling. So please contact, I believe it's Karen Chong, to get started on contributing to that project, all right? So, good morning, Jasmine. Thank you for joining us this morning. Good morning, Keng Hoi. And hello, Xiao Li. Good morning, everyone. All right, so I hope everyone's had a good weekend so far. Yeah, like I said, and you're staying safe. Oh, one final thing was the Nakpo Gujo. So Vajra Secrets is having a sale. I think it's 40% off on Nakpo Gujo. So given the current rise in active COVID cases throughout Malaysia, it seems especially prudent and appropriate to stock up on Nakpo Gujo at the moment. All right, so before we get started this morning, just want to, as usual, do a short prayer to ascribe the source of the knowledge and the information that's going to be shared this morning, as per tradition. All right, so I go for refuge in my Lama, from whom I receive these teachings. I go for refuge in the lineage Lamas, from whom my Lamas receive these teachings. All right, so thank you very much, guys, for taking the time out on this Sunday to join me in this live stream sharing. By the way, I can see off to the side that it's very jerky. So if you guys are having technical problems, please let me know and then I'll try to fix it as smoothly as I can on camera. All right. So last week, do a quick recap. Last week, what did I talk about? Last week, I spoke about the dangers of overthinking. And it seemed to be, I guess, a pretty popular topic with everyone. So that's kind of cool. I talked about where overthinking comes from. So how it arises from the clinging to the perceived importance of something and clinging to a hopeful outcome. I spoke about what the dangers of overthinking are, that if we engage in overthinking and we don't break the cycle, that it's very hard for us to move on, it's hard for us to develop new skills, it's hard for us to progress, we kind of get stuck in the past. Good morning, Liman. Thank you for joining us outside Wisdom Hole. I don't know where you are right now. So I talked about how overthinking makes it very difficult for us to enjoy what it is that we have, and we put ourselves at risk of reading a situation wrongly or developing tunnel vision or a very narrow point of view. Overthinking also develops a tendency in us to overcomplicate a situation and to put attention on one thing and then lose focus on other things, or not pay attention to other things, and therefore not be able to adequately address other challenges we might be experiencing in our lives. All right, and also shared last week about how to overcome overthinking, and that some of these methods include meditation to develop focus and to train our mind, to engage in breathing exercises to help us to break the cycle, like this runaway train of thought that we experience when we engage in overthinking, and talked about how it's important for us to try to develop ourselves to become solution-oriented instead of problem-fixated, and to train ourselves to ask the right questions, and also the importance of relying on a guru to help us to break this habit that we have of overthinking. All right. So as the weeks go by, I hope that you guys are kind of getting the sense of a few things that I appear to keep reiterating over and over again. For example, the benefits of relying on a guru, the benefits of doing our practice well and not rushing through our practice. And when I say practice, I don't mean Dharma work. I mean Dharma practice, making offerings, doing our sadhana, doing our prayers, doing pujas and things like that. All right. So the benefits of engaging them properly. And also the benefits of being kind to others. So last week I had talked about how human beings are essentially social creatures, in the sense that we rely and we are dependent on one another, not just for secular survival but also for spiritual progress as well. And last week I had talked about how it would behoove us and benefit us to focus out, because being that we have to live with other people, that it would benefit us as well to try to create as pleasant a living environment as possible, or a living situation as possible, and the benefits of contributing to that. All right. So the reason why I keep talking about all these things, you might be thinking, well, I've heard it all before and it's nothing new, and why do facilitators, Dharma teachers keep bringing this up over and over again? The reason why we bring it up over and over again purely simply is because all of us forget, all of us slip, all of us get distracted, all of us need reminders, not just people who are listening, but the speakers too sometimes, right? So that's why it's brought up over and over again. So that's my short recap for what happened last week. It looks like I have frozen. I don't know if you guys can still hear me, but I hope that you can. Let me know if you can't, all right? So yeah, that's my short recap for last week. And so before I get into things today, what I would also like to do is I would like to thank the sponsors of today's sharing, the people who made it possible for this online sharing to happen. The first one being Stacey Isidro. Again, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name, who contributed to making this talk possible, but doesn't have a dedication. And the second sponsor being Anonymous, and would like to dedicate their contribution towards all beings' liberation from suffering and attainment for pure compassion and wisdom. So again, thank you guys so much. Sponsorship and contribution makes Dharma activity possible, all right? Without people supporting the center, many things would not be possible. So thank you guys so much for making it possible for Dharma to spread. All right. So this week, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the dangers of boredom, and how to address it, and why we should address it, and how we can deal with it. So the reason why I wanted to talk about boredom is because there have been rumors, I stress, very much stress that it's rumors about the lockdown continuing, right? Rather not continuing, but rather MCO 2.0 or whatever it is being enforced. And although nothing is confirmed yet, because again, purely just rumors, there is some fear and trepidation amongst people, I guess, about how to deal with a second wave of COVID cases as well as a second phase of lockdown. And one of the things that people commonly raise is the challenge of boredom. So I wanted to talk about this, hopefully to share some information and some tools that may help people to quote unquote cope with boredom. So why is it important to talk about boredom? Because actually what Rinpoche said was, what Rinpoche had talked about was where boredom arises from, and so why it's important to control or be able to address our boredom. And that is, and I assume, because you're watching this on the Kechara Facebook fan page, that you are interested in deeper spiritual practice. You're interested in engaging in retreats. And so being able to address our boredom, being able to work with our boredom is very, very important if we are people who want to engage in retreats. All right. So if you think about it, and the reason why I bring this up is because Facebook the other day reminded me of a couple of posts that I uploaded a few years ago, and it was of nuns meditating in Tibet, and they were meditating in like a 6x6 hut. Literally, that's it. And it was out in a field in the middle of the snow in the middle of winter. And so, I was thinking, would I be able to do something like that? Would I have the tenacity and the strength or the faith or the devotion to do something like that? And how would my mind react? How would I react? And so I was thinking, well, if we were to engage in longer retreats, would we be bored in a meditation hut? Maybe the hut's not 6x6, maybe we're sitting in a cave, but our cave is shut up. And it's closed off to the world, and we never see anyone. We have no sources of entertainment. For example, like Jetsuma Tenzin Palmo, who meditated in a cave for 12 years. Will boredom set in if we were in a meditation hut or meditation cave? And do we think that monks and nuns get bored when they're engaging in retreats? And, contemplating on... good morning, Hannah. Thank you for joining from JB. So do we... thinking back, how do we react in short retreats? I've been in group retreats before, and after the retreat, people share their experiences, and I've heard people say, there was a very strong urge to check the phone. There was a very strong urge to get up and walk around, or they had a very strong urge to go to the toilet to stretch their legs or whatever, or to take a break from the environment. And sometimes you'll see people during retreat looking around and looking here, looking there, and not sitting and focusing on their mantras or sitting and focusing on their visualizations. So think back to how we react and how we behave during short retreats, and think that, meditate and analyze how our mind behaves. More often than not, in that environment, in that situation, there is a component of boredom, because you're doing something over and over again, reciting the same thing over and over again. And so in those moments, in those situations, how do we deal with the boredom that sets in? And being that we have so much difficulty with controlling boredom or observing and dealing with boredom in such a short retreat, how will we ever engage in longer practice, in more extensive, deeper practice, right? So that's the reason why I wanted to talk about the importance of countering or dealing with boredom, because if we're interested in engaging in deeper practices, that is something that we will need to address at some point. So boredom isn't about space. It isn't about the size of the place that we're in, because a person can be bored anywhere. For example, a person can be just as bored in a 900 square foot apartment as they would be in, for example, 35 acres of land in Kechara Forest Retreat. There are people who have been to KFR before, and as beautiful as it is, as many things as they are to do, they're like, oh, so boring lah. I can't wait to go back to KL. There's nothing to do. There are people who express, that 35 acres is not enough for them to counter or to deal with their boredom. So it's not about the size or the space that you find yourselves in. Equally, there are people who say, well, during the MCO, I was stuck in this apartment that was 900 square feet. And I couldn't go out. I couldn't go to my apartment gym. I couldn't go to my apartment swimming pool. I could only go out once a day to buy groceries. I was so bored. There's nothing to do. I'm going to watch everything there is on Netflix or everything there is on YouTube. So again, it's not about the size or the space that you find yourself in. All right. The importance of talking about boredom also covers the fact that, when we are bored, what we are trying to do is we're always looking for something to fill our time, right? So we also need to think, when we are engaging in this race or this drive or this movement to find something to try and fill our time with, are we looking for things that are useful? Are we looking for things that add to our practice? Are we looking for activities that are virtuous? Are we looking for things to distract us? Are we looking for things that are productive or constructive? All right. So when we are unable to address boredom in our mind stream, invariably what you will find is people running here and there, running here and running there. You will find people, traveling here and traveling there, trying to find something that will so-called satiate their boredom or address or get rid of their boredom, all right? So for a short while, maybe that's kind of okay because that's something that everybody goes through. But if you think about it in the long term, where does that kind of approach end? When do we stop looking for things that will help to address our boredom or help to fulfill our boredom or help to get rid of our boredom? At what point is enough enough? All right, so surely there has to be a way that is more effective in us dealing with our boredom. And I don't know, as I'm saying it, I'm realizing that I'm saying the word boredom quite a lot. But anyway, when is enough enough? All right, in this drive, in this push to look for something to make sure that we're not bored. So, given that I've talked so much about the importance of addressing boredom, what is boredom actually? Boredom is the state of, it's a displeasure. It's a reaction of displeasure to our neutral or basic state of being. So, displeasure with ourselves when we're doing nothing and we're just being, we're just sitting there, we're just existing. Boredom is our reaction to that state. And we are taught from a young age, a very young age, to basically abhor boredom. We're taught that boredom is bad. We're taught that we should dislike boredom. We are taught that boredom is unproductive. We're taught that boredom is not a good state to be in. So, if you think about it from when you're very, very young, when a child says, I'm so bored, what is a parent's immediate reaction? Go find something to do lah, right? Or, oh, you're so bored ah? Oh, then you need new toys. Or, you need to find something to occupy your time. Or, we must fill your time with as much activity as possible and occupy your mind and make sure that you are never bored, right? So immediately, already we're teaching children, or we ourselves are taught from a young age, that boredom is a bad thing. And then it continues as we get older, because when somebody asks us what we're doing or what we're up to, and then we reply and we say that oh, I'm so bored, I'm not doing anything, it's as though our life isn't as exciting enough. And it's made even worse because when you are on social media and when you see all of these things that people are doing, you never see the lows, but you always see the highs, you always see the happy moments. You never see the struggles, but you always see the enjoyable results, right? So when you see other people on social media and you see that they are apparently doing all of these so-called exciting things, then the fact that you are doing nothing, or you say that you're doing nothing, and that you're bored, becomes equated as some kind of failure. So boredom appears to be a state of failure. All right. So even when we're older, we're taught that boredom is failure, boredom is bad, and that we should do everything possible that we can to avoid being bored. So where does boredom actually arise from? Boredom arises from our habit to label experiences as either, I say either because that appears to be two, but to label experiences as pleasant, as unpleasant, or as neutral. All right, so something is fun, something is not fun. Something is exciting, something is not exciting. I like this situation, I don't like this situation. I like this conversation, I don't like that conversation. This gathering is very interesting, this gathering is not very interesting. All right, so in the absence of something that's pleasant or unpleasant, so in the absence of this oscillation between the two, we become bored when we are in that neutral state because we don't have that volatility between the two. So in reality, what boredom actually is that boredom is our personal unease and our personal discomfort at abiding in a neutral state. All right, so where there's something that's neither exciting nor not exciting, or pleasurable nor unpleasurable. All right, so boredom is actually therefore a reflection of our uncontrolled mind. If you look, going back to the example of kids, because kids are the ones who are most, I guess, verbal and expressive about it, like, I'm so bored. I remember me saying that when I was a child. So when you think back to your childhood, or you think back to children that you have or that you have observed, and them saying, I'm so bored, think about what are the characteristics of a child's mind. A child's mind is something that lacks control. A child's mind is something that demonstrates an inability to focus. And a child's mind is something that's easily satisfied as well as being easily dissatisfied. So it's a child who is bored, it's very easy to unbore them. Similarly, it's very easy to make them bored or make them unhappy. All right. So a child's mind, a child isn't in control of his or her mind. An uncontrolled mind is a mind that goes in 1,000 different places looking for something to satisfy themselves. So sometimes you'll see in a conversation, some people, they are listening to you, but at the same time also their eyes are going all over the place. And they appear to be unable to focus on you. And they appear to be that, or maybe lost in their own thoughts, can't focus on the conversation. And so what's the feeling that you get? The feeling they get is, this person doesn't appear to be interested in me. This person appears to be bored by my interaction with them. So an uncontrolled mind is a mind that goes in 1,000 different places at the same time, looking for something to satisfy it. Whereas a controlled mind is a mind that knows how to focus on what is important. So again, going back to the analogy of a child, think about a child when a child is focused. Let's say the child is playing with Lego and very, very focused on building something, right? So in that moment, the child is able to control his mind and able to control his attention and not be bored, because the child is focused on accomplishing something. Therefore, if you think about it, the ability to focus one's mind and the ability to control one's mind, the result of that is that we are able to achieve something. In the case of a child who's able to control and to focus his mind, perhaps on that particular task, is able to achieve the result of building something or completing a Lego project. All right, so boredom also, aside from being a reflection of a mind that's uncontrolled, is a reflection of a mind that's also very cravings-led. And what do I mean by that? A mind that is cravings-led is a mind that there's a desire that needs to be fulfilled, there's a desire that needs to be entertained, or there's a desire for excitement. And so this mind is always driven by that, driven by the need to find something that's entertaining, or driven by the need to have something that's exciting. Good morning, Brian. Thank you for joining us this morning. All right, so when you are somebody who is constantly chasing something that is exciting or that's entertaining or something that's distracting, when you're somebody like that, what happens is that in the absence of that kind of so-called fulfillment, you become acutely aware of its absence. And as a result of becoming acutely aware of the absence of something that's entertaining or something that's distracting or something that's exciting, then we become bored. Okay, so then you go from becoming bored and thinking, since I'm bored, therefore I need to look for something else in order to fulfill or excite or entertain or distract me. Right? And then it doesn't end. So that's why I go back to my original question of why is it important to be able to effectively approach boredom, is because if we are the type of people who are very cravings-led, who are very driven by our desires, for a little while, it's okay in the sense that that's something all of us are habituated into. But over time, if you think long term, where does it end? It never ends, because our minds will if we keep reinforcing a certain tendency, we will keep repeating that tendency. It's like what Ramshay always said, it's like trying to quench our thirst with salt water. Salt water can't quench our thirst, and so the thirst will always remain. And so if we keep reinforcing our drive, our push to remove our boredom, to do something about our boredom by addressing it with something exciting, by addressing it with something that's entertaining, by distracting ourselves with it, we will constantly go up and down, because once that exciting thing is no longer around, because it's impermanent, in its absence, again boredom will arise, all right? And so we will push again to try and get rid of that boredom. Okay, so what are the consequences of boredom? So if it works both ways. If you're focused and if your mind is controlled and you can achieve something, therefore, and you can complete something, therefore, if you are bored and you allow your mind to run in 1,000 different places and we are not able to effectively approach it, or rather constructively approach it, then as a consequence of boredom, we don't finish things. So think to people in your life. Think about instances or examples that apply to yourself. Think about situations that apply to yourself. And think about examples of people that you have observed. You don't need to name names. You don't need to apply judgment to them. You just need to recall an example, right? So recall examples of people that you know, that you have observed, who have a tendency not to finish things, and who have a tendency not to finish projects or finish things that they have started. So they pick up a lot of things and they never seem to see that project through to completion. It's not a case of them handing over the project to somebody else in a professional or in a mature manner. It's start this, didn't finish, start that, didn't finish, explore this, didn't see it through to completion, right? So think of some examples of people that you know, perhaps it's yourself or perhaps it's somebody else that you know, who exhibit tendencies of not finishing things that they start. And they're always starting something new. So part of them doing that, just give me 1 second, I just want to see if there are any comments. I have like 3 different views for this live stream because like it doesn't always, show everyone. But anyway, so, good morning, Ash. Thank you for joining us this morning. So think of people like that who are always starting things and not necessarily finishing them, right? Part of it, part of their tendency not to finish things could be due to a lack of tenacity. So perhaps they haven't been trained in challenging situations, or they haven't so-called experienced enough suffering to know how to push through obstacles and to know how to deal with difficulties. And so they give up very easily. Part of it could be that. Part of it could be lack of perseverance. Part of it could be lack of interest. It could be all of those reasons. Another reason for why people may not necessarily finish things is because they get bored. So the novelty and the excitement of starting something new fulfills that sense of boredom, or gets rid of that sense of boredom that they have. But once they move past the starting point and it starts to get less novel, it starts to get less exciting, then boredom sets in, and so they drop it because they don't know how to work with their boredom. All right? So they're always looking for something and picking up things that are new and dropping them before seeing it through, seeing the project through. It could be reflective of something that's deeper. It could be reflective of boredom and the need to always look for the next exciting, next new thing to occupy their minds. So it's a case of new and novel versus old. All right, so conversely, imagine if you become someone who's not boredom-led. Imagine if you become like that child who is focused on finishing the Lego project. All right? If you're able to become someone who is not boredom-led, then you can finish things. You can achieve results. You can do things and you can deal with the minutiae or the mundane or the nitty-gritty or the tedium that often comes with a lot of projects. The repetitiveness that comes with a lot of projects, with a lot of things that we wish to do. We can work with that because we no longer are affected or influenced by the boredom of the minutiae in order to accomplish something. All right, so people who are very boredom-led, being able to effectively observe and constructively approach their boredom will be able to finish things. All right, another example. Good morning, Sukwan. Thank you for joining us this morning. And forgot to say, hope you guys all who are joining me from, JP didn't do his mindful morning meditation. All right. Yeah, but thank you guys for joining me this morning. All right. So another consequence of boredom is our reinforcement of the tendency to consume a lot of unhelpful information. How often do you find yourself mindlessly scrolling through TikTok or YouTube or Facebook or Instagram? How often do you find yourself in a conversation with somebody, at a dinner table with somebody, and although there's someone literally right in front of you ready to engage in conversation with you, you've got your phone up and you're doing this, And you know that a person's on Instagram because it's a double tap, right? You know that somebody's on Facebook when it's a single tap. But how often do you find yourself mindlessly scrolling through social media platforms or mindlessly scrolling through news websites? And then before you know it, the entire day is passed. You've accomplished nothing. Or it's very, very, very late now and you can't sleep because you've been staring at your screen the entire time. I was actually having a conversation with somebody about this yesterday, and they were saying that at the end of the day, to unwind or to relax, they will scroll through their phone. Before doing their sadhana, they will scroll through their phone to try and wake up and to try and perk themselves up before they do their sadhana. And then before they know it, it's 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning and they still haven't done their sadhana. And they're like, why do I keep doing this to myself? Excuse me. So how many of us often find ourselves in that same situation? No one's exempt from it. I know I do it too. All right, so how many of us find ourselves mindlessly consuming information in order to, excuse me, in order to attempt to distract from our boredom? And a lot of the time, the information that we're consuming, a lot of the time, the information that we are absorbing, it doesn't really add value and it doesn't really help to develop our mind. A lot of the time, actually, the information that we're consuming actually increases our craving, it increases our desire. So if you, for example, look at the comment on food videos, right? Look at the comments on food videos. Oftentimes you'll see people saying things like, oh my God, I really shouldn't have watched this so late at night because now I'm so hungry. Oh my God, I shouldn't have, watched this during lunchtime when I can't go out to eat for a little while. So the content that we're consuming reinforces the craving or the desire that we already have. How many times have you seen something, online and then you wanted to buy it because you saw an advertisement for it? If I were to give you a personal example, there's this brand of bicycle mount that I saw an advert for over and over again on Facebook, and as a result of it, I got it. But after a while of having it on my bike, I stopped using it because it's completely useless to me. I don't actually need it. It's been sitting there for a while. So how many times have we been led down the path of wanting, then buying something as a result of unhelpful information that we've consumed or watched online? So a lot of the time, the information that we watch doesn't help us on an ultimate level. It's not something that is designed to improve our mind or improve our practice spiritually, but it is designed to increase our craving, increase our desire. Now, once in a while, it's fine. Once in a while, I guess you would say in samsara, it's normal for us to engage in this mindless scrolling of information, all right? It doesn't make you a bad person to do that because your actions are not permanent. Your actions are not a part of you. Your actions can change, all right? So it doesn't make you a bad person if you do that. But the truth of the matter, the fact is that when we do this over and over again, it is wasteful. It is a waste of time on an ultimate level. Because just like the example I gave you of the person I spoke to yesterday who realizes that before they know it, it's 3 or 4 a.m. and they've been scrolling through their phone the whole night and therefore they're very, very sleepy when they do their sadhana. It does end up wasting a lot of time. Now, that is why there are vows that lay people take, that monks and nuns take, that address, or the vow rather, is to avoid distraction by entertainment. Why does such a vow exist? Such a vow exists purely because when we engage in an act of trying to distract ourselves with entertainment, it is wasteful. It detracts and it takes away time from our Dharma practice. Good morning, JC. All right, so why is it considered wasteful? I'm saying wasteful, I'm not saying good or bad, but why is it considered wasteful or rather unhelpful? It's considered wasteful because how many more years do we have in this lifetime? How many more years do we have to practice? How many more years have we already wasted in not practicing? And how many more years do we have left? All right. Do we know for sure how many more years we have left. So for somebody like me who's turning 34 soon, how much time have I wasted in the past 34 years? And how much more time do I have left? Is it a guarantee that I will live to 70? Is it a guarantee that I'll live to 80? Being that it's possible that I have wasted or I have lived more years of my life than I already have left, how much time I've already wasted, and how much more time can I afford to waste? All right? So it's considered wasteful because it takes away time from preparing ourselves or from developing ourselves for an ultimate benefit. So as they would say in the text, the great goal of enlightenment. It's considered wasteful because it takes away time from us developing qualities like compassion, from developing wisdom, from being able to benefit other people, from being able to alleviate other people's suffering. All right? Excuse me. So when we are unable to constructively approach our boredom, one of the consequences is that we end up wasting a lot of time. And we waste time because we do things to consume information, to try and distract ourselves from boredom, and then that then leads on and develops and escalates into procrastination, which all of us are masters and experts of procrastination. All right. So hand in hand with boredom, therefore, and the consumption of useless information, the mindless consumption of useless information, as well as wasting time, is that we develop a habit of seeking distractions constantly. All right, and once in a while, maybe we need that. Once in a while, maybe a distraction is needed because it takes away energy from something else that we have found ourselves sucked into. So, for example, someone who is very, very anxious and has dug themselves into a hole of anxiety and is digging themselves a deeper and deeper hole, sometimes, a distraction is needed because it helps to break that runaway train of anxiety. All right, but if we rely on that and we do that over and over again, then we become in danger of always looking for distractions and of developing a habit of seeking distraction and ignoring our real problems. So remember what I said earlier about boredom being the result of our tendency to label an experience or an interaction as pleasant and unpleasant, or neutral, and therefore in the absence of something that's pleasant or unpleasant, and we remain in that neutral state, that we are deeply uneasy with it, that we're very uncomfortable with it. So when we develop a habit of seeking distraction and of distracting ourselves from our boredom, what invariably ends up happening is that we ignore our real problems. So by always seeking distraction, we are enabling ourselves to avoid self-examination. We are enabling ourselves to avoid opportunities to look into our minds and to do the really dirty, tough, uncomfortable, very messy work of meditating on our behavior. An analogy, an example that Rinpoche has given before is the example of people in relationships. So why is it that some people are very faithful or loyal or devoted to their partner, and they can stay with that same person and the relationship is very pleasant and very good and very harmonious between the two for many, many years, and they can develop together and they can rise together and they can achieve together? On the other hand, why is it that some people are always in relationships, always in new relationships rather? Why is it that some people get so easily bored with their partner and they're always with a new one, always looking for a new one? Why is it that some people are always cheating on their partners? Because after they've been together with someone for a while, the relationship has lost its shine, has lost its novelty. The honeymoon period, as they say, is over and all the excitement is gone, and so they need to look for the excitement somewhere else, and they start looking elsewhere in order to distract themselves from the tedium, as I mentioned earlier, from the tedium of the relationship. They distract themselves from dealing with the problems of the relationship. So, using that example of a relationship and how some people are able to work through the so-called mundane, minutia, or tedium of a long-term relationship, whereas other people are not, and they're always seeking to distract themselves. That goes back to boredom, and the consequence of boredom being unable to see something through, being unable to see the relationship through to its end, right? The inevitable end at the moment of our passing. But there are some people who are constantly looking for distraction. And so when you're constantly looking for distraction, always looking for something new to fulfill that sense of excitement that we are craving for, we don't get an opportunity to self-examine. So in the case of a relationship, is someone who's always jumping from relationship to relationship and always in something new, is their underlying problem loneliness? Is their underlying problem the need to always seek companionship? Or is the underlying problem, for example, inability to compromise, reacting out of anger to a loved one? Because we are boredom-led, and because we allow boredom to overtake us, and we think, oh, because I'm so bored, it's time for me to go look for something new, the person doesn't get an opportunity to examine why their relationships always fail, because they assume that since they're bored, it's time to look for something new. It distracts them from addressing the real problems, which could be, like I said, loneliness. It could be need for companionship, need to always be with a companion, jealousy, anger, and so on. Those might be the actual underlying reasons, all right? So, yes, it's ugly, it's uncomfortable. And as someone had raised in one of the previous sharings I did a few weeks ago, they had said that sometimes being honest is very difficult, because when you meditate and you self-examine your mind, sometimes you uncover things, desires, tendencies, qualities, characteristics that are not very pleasant and that are embarrassing, all right? But the thing is, if we don't resolve those issues, we are perpetuating the same cycle over and over again. If we don't resolve the issue of loneliness, for example, so I get into a relationship because I'm lonely, once the relationship has lost its luster, once it's lost its novelty, you will look for something new in order to fulfill the loneliness. But the thing is, the loneliness itself hasn't been addressed yet. The loneliness being the underlying issue hasn't been addressed yet. So yes, it is dirty work, it is messy work to try and figure out that actually deep down inside, I'm a very lonely person. But if we don't address that, then we don't give ourselves a chance for our next relationship to prosper and to succeed rather than to suffer. All right. So in a normal environment, you can say that this type of dirty work of examining and digging into our mind stream and to try and figure out our triggers or our tendencies or habits, that kind of dirty work is done with our therapist, for example, or it's done with a friend who tells us the cold, hard facts about the type of people that we are. The person who tells us the truth, not the person who tells us what we want to hear. Right? So that type of work is done with a therapist or a friend who will compel us to face ourselves and to stop ourselves from becoming distracted. So a girlfriend may say, hey, why are you always getting into new relationships? Why do you always have a new boyfriend every time I see you? Is it because there's something that you haven't dealt with yet? It may be a friend like that, all right? Now, in a Dharma environment, of course, who's going to do that with us? First of all, in a Dharma environment, being distracted is detrimental to our practice, all right? You see who's joined us? Okay, so yeah, being distracted is considered detrimental to our practice because it takes away time for us to meditate and to examine our minds. So, for example, think about the questions that we should be asking ourselves. Questions like, why are we always angry? Why am I always angry? Why am I always jealous? Why is it that when I see somebody else getting something good, I'm unable to rejoice with them? Why do I react in envy? Why do I react with anxiety? All right. Why do I always do things that hurt other people? How is it that I engage in actions that hurt other people on a gross and subtle level? Those are the types of questions that we should be asking when we engage in our Dharma practice. But the thing is, some people don't want to think of themselves in this way. And so when they are encouraged, or when they find themselves in a situation where they are compelled to think in this way, then they will poo-poo Dharma, they will poo-poo meditation, they will say, oh, I don't need to do that, because some people may even say this, I don't need to do that kind of Dharma practice, and I'll avoid Dharma practice because I'm already doing Dharma work. All right. Rinpoche said before that Dharma work and Dharma practice are two different things. Just because somebody is volunteering or somebody is engaged full-time with a Dharma center or engaged full-time in Dharma work does not mean that they can neglect or avoid Dharma practice, because Dharma practice is necessary to generate the merits for our Dharma work to be successful. Dharma work helps us to create a platform in order to deliver the same tools to other people. And yes, we will generate merits. Yes, it will add to our practice. Yes, we will be able to benefit other people. But at the same time, we should not neglect our prayers, and we should not neglect our meditations just because we're doing Dharma work. So, it is not recommended, it is not beneficial for us to say, today I spent the whole day in the temple rolling mantras. Since I was so guai the whole day, or so good the whole day, so well behaved the whole day, and doing virtuous work the whole day, I don't need to do my sadhana tonight. Or people will say, oh, I did puja today. In puja, during Lama Chopa, we did Ganen Hagyama, Guru Yoga of Lama Tsongkhapa. Since we did Ganen Hagyama during puja, then I don't need to do Ganen Hagyama in my sadhana today. It doesn't work like that, okay? So, good morning, Debbie. Alright, so what Rinpoche explained before is that Dharma work and Dharma practice are separate. Dharma practice generates the merits for us to have Dharma work that is successful. But when some people are presented with the opportunity or compelled to do Dharma practice, they may poo-poo Dharma because they don't want to be placed in an environment, or find themselves in an environment or a situation whereby they are compelled to self-examine and compelled to ask themselves the hard, difficult, dirty, messy, so on, questions of their own character. All right? So, boredom, and the consequence of boredom is that we will seek to distract ourselves from Dharma practice. For example, like I mentioned earlier, the example of doing retreats and not focusing on the visualizations, not focusing on the meditations and the recitation during the retreat, but looking here and there, thinking, oh my god, how much longer is this session going to be? I haven't had breakfast yet if you're doing the early morning session. I haven't had lunch yet if you're doing the mid-morning session. Why is it so dark? Why is it so tired? Why is it so hot? Look here and look there. Oh look, the person's scratching their leg. A consequence of us reinforcing our boredom or trying to address our boredom by always looking for distractions is that we will invariably end up neglecting our Dharma practice. Right? Dharma practice, whether it's recitation or whether it's meditation, so examining our mind. So, for most people, the person who helps us to self-examine and to ask ourselves the questions about what kind of unhelpful traits we need to work on, and what are the helpful traits that we need to develop. For most people, that would be their therapist. For most people, that would be their friend. For people in Dharma, for people who want to practice Dharma, for people who actually want to improve and not just do it as a routine or as a rote, something that is just very, very, oh, I do it because I'm expected to, but somebody who wants to put effort in to progress. People who want to really practice Dharma, that's your Lama. The person who will help you to self-examine, the person who will help you to put what it is that you read, what it is that you learn into actual practice is your Lama. And so it is true what the scriptures say, what the monks say, is that you need a Lama to help you to do the dirty work. Dirty work in the sense of the dirty work of digging into your mind. Alright? So people who run away from the Guru is the one who shines the light into our minds. The Guru is the one who makes us face ourselves and who makes us deal with ourselves. The Guru is the one who creates or engineers situations that really makes us take a long, hard look at what kind of people we are, how we react when we're under pressure. So people who run away from the Guru, who run away or who leave or who avoid situations where they are compelled to face themselves, those people are again seeking distractions from facing themselves. All right. So having talked about all that, having talked about the importance of constructively approaching our boredom, having talked about where boredom arises from, having talked about the consequences of not effectively countering our boredom, then again, therefore, it would only be fair, excuse me, it would only be fair for me to share some of the tools that Rinpoche has previously shared about how we can counter our boredom. The thing about Rinpoche is that Rinpoche very often would not address a topic directly. So in the sense of Rinpoche would sometimes, Rinpoche would not address things in a very chronological order, right? So Rinpoche has talked previously a lot about boredom, but not directly. For example, some people around Rinpoche would scroll through their phones. So Rinpoche would say, stop scrolling through your phone. And what Rinpoche would say is, it's rude or disrespectful to scroll through your phone in front of your Lama, which it is. And if you exhibit that habit in front of your teacher, then you exhibit that habit in front of other people. And I've already talked about how other people will feel when you look at your phone in front of them, right? But when Rinpoche tells us, don't scroll on your phone in front of me, that's also saying, don't always try to address your boredom of not having something to do or of always having to keep busy when you feel bored. Break that tendency, break that cycle. So Rinpoche did share many methods, many tools of how we can effectively, constructively counter our boredom. The first thing to do is about realizing where boredom falls on the emotional spectrum. Boredom falls between the very intense emotional highs of fascination and excitement, and then the very paralyzing, very crippling lows of lethargy, drowsiness, complacency, depression. All right. So boredom is that neutral moment, neutral space, neutral place between excitement, excuse me, and lethargy, depression, complacency, drowsiness, and so on. Right. So the world around us tells us that we must always be on the go. We have to go, and we have to be pumped up all the time, and we have to keep going, and that we feel alive, and we feel vibrant, and we feel, dynamic when we are swinging from the highs of being very excited to the lows of being depressed. And boredom falls on the spectrum where if we have neither and we're not swinging between the two, then we're bored, because suddenly we don't feel alive, we don't feel vibrant, we don't feel dynamic. All right, so the first thing to do is realize where boredom falls on the emotional spectrum, because that will help us to acknowledge that help us to recognize rather, that we need to break our dependency on that kind of emotional volatility in order to feel alive, all right? And so yes, the first step to breaking that dependency on that kind of oscillation is by recognizing where boredom falls on the emotional spectrum. Then, since boredom is that neutral space between intense excitement and fascination as well as paralyzing depression, therefore the first tool that we can apply, or we can try to apply, or practice applying rather, is practice applying to counter boredom is by trying to approach everything as equally and as neutrally as possible. So something that Rinpoche would often highlight are people who get very excited, and then people who get very sad or very depressed, and people who get therefore then express that they are very bored because they don't have the emotional or mood swing between the two. All right. So by avoiding emotional upheavals from extreme highs to extreme lows, and by detaching ourselves to the addiction of feeling those highs and lows, and therefore feeling alive as a result of swinging between those highs and lows, we are far less likely to be bored, because boredom is actually the absence of those highs and lows. When we are able to avoid those emotional upheavals by approaching every situation as neutrally and as objectively as possible, we stop relying on that kind of volatility in order to feel good, in order to feel worthy, in order to feel valued, or in order to feel like we are making a mark on something, or making a mark on the world, or in order to feel like we are somebody of substance, or somebody of importance. All right? So by trying to approach everything as neutrally and as objectively and as equally as possible, it doesn't mean that you stop caring, but it means that you stop allowing yourself to rely on the mood swings in order to feel good about yourself, in order to feel valued, in order to feel like you are alive. And by doing that, that is actually the first step on the road for us to developing contentment with our situation and with what we have. Instead of always chasing for something that's new or trying to find contentment in this swing between the highs and lows that we reinforce in ourselves, in order for me to feel alive, in order for me to feel happy, I need to go from very, very happy to very, very sad. All right? So, being that boredom is the absence of this, when we are able to recognize that we're able to recognize boredom's place on the emotional spectrum, and then we try to, we practice constructively approaching boredom by countering it, by approaching everything as neutrally and as objectively and with temperately as possible. That is the first step for us to developing a sense of contentment for when we are in this neutral state. Okay? Now, there are two approaches to boredom, in the sense that you can approach boredom by addressing or focusing on it. You can also address boredom by keeping it in view or putting it to one side. So I'm going to talk about the keeping it in view approach first. Now, boredom, like anything else, if you meditate on it and you reduce it, it boils down to an energy. It boils down to maybe a physical reaction in your body. So sometimes when you're bored, you feel itchy, you feel tingly, you feel very restless. But boredom is an energy. And so one way that we can constructively approach boredom is by redirecting that energy. So remember what I mentioned earlier about children who are able to focus in order to complete something. So one way of constructively approaching boredom is by finding a purpose or finding a goal. And that means redirecting your boredom energy, that tingly sensation or that itchy backside sensation, towards something that's good. All right, so having a purpose. So for the child who is building Lego, having a purpose for them, which is finish the Lego project or to build something that is fun or whatever, that having a purpose keeps them engaged. Having a purpose keeps them interested. Having a purpose keeps them focused. And so in the same way that it applies to a child, it also applies to us as well. All right. And so more often than not, focusing out and focusing on other people with the intent of helping them is a constructive and helpful way of developing a purpose or developing a goal in order to effectively counter boredom or effectively approach boredom. Because if you're going to do something in order to distract yourself from being bored, you might as well make it something good. Because all of us are going to try to distract ourselves. That's our habituation, right? To distract ourselves. So if you're going to do that, why not try to distract yourselves by doing something good? Because focusing out on other people, focusing out on how you can help somebody else, takes away the energy of us focusing on how bored we are. All right? Why is it easier, why is it better for us to focus out on others or focus out on benefiting others, to distract ourselves from being bored? Why others? Why not ourselves? Others, because when you feel a sense of responsibility towards somebody else, or when you feel a sense of care towards somebody else, the compulsion, the care combined will, or may be adequate motivation for us to see the project through, to work through the boredom, to work through the minutiae in order to complete the task or project, because we know that completion will benefit them. Alright, so as what Ramji always said, KIV, which means keep in view. If you're angry, keep your anger in view. KIV your anger. If you are attached, keep your attachment in view. KIV your attachments for now. Focus on helping somebody else, because when you're helping somebody else and your energy is going there, you're not giving energy to the anger, you're not giving energy to the anxiety, you're not giving energy to the depression, you're not giving energy to the boredom. All right, so think, why is it so difficult for us to focus and to hold a visualization for 5 seconds? Why is it so difficult for us to focus and to sit and to be still during our retreats? But if somebody asks you, for example, what happened in this sitcom episode 5, 10, 20 years ago, you can tell them the actor was playing, you can tell them the situation, you can tell them the mood, you can tell them what the characters' costumes were. Some of us can even quote the lines verbatim. Why is it that for meditation or for visualization or for practice, we are unable to focus our mind and it goes all over the place? But for other things, we are very, very focused and we can remember and recall it with perfect memory. Why? Now, it's not good or bad. What it shows is that we do have the ability to focus. We do have the ability to redirect our energy. And so, if we are going to try to redirect our energy of boredom towards something that's positive, towards something that's beneficial, that is something that we actually need to practice, because we've practiced focusing our minds on other things which haven't helped us so far. So why not practice focusing our minds on something else that that can help us or that can help other people in order to distract ourselves or in order to KIV our boredom. All right. So how do you practice focusing on something that's positive or focusing on something that's beneficial? And as you guys will know, if you've been following this for a few weeks, the best way, the easiest, most accessible way for all of us to engage in order to practice focusing our minds, it doesn't cost any money, doesn't require any special equipment, is meditation. All you need is a place to meditate. All right. So since boredom arises from the mind, therefore the solution to boredom is also in our mind. It's impossible for a solution to boredom which arises internally. It's impossible for the solution to arise or to come from an external source. All right, because the problem isn't external. The challenge isn't external. So therefore, seeking external distractions in order to satiate internal boredom will never work, will never provide a permanent solution, because we still haven't addressed the internal underlying issue, which is where boredom arises from. And boredom arises from our mind. It doesn't arise from outside. So meditating means setting an intention to remove all distractions. Why? Because when you're meditating, you're trying to put yourself in an environment where you have as few distractions as possible. So there is a time for seeking distraction. And when you are seeking distraction, in order to constructively counter boredom, try to seek a distraction that at least benefits somebody else, if you're going to do it, because that's our tendency too. At the same time, when you engage in your Dharma practice, and you engage in meditation as part of your Dharma practice, in those times that you allot to your Dharma practice, you're putting yourself in a situation where you are trying to remove all distractions possible. Right? So when you meditate, you are trying to put yourself and you're trying to practice being in a situation where you are comfortable with your neutral self, where you're basically not doing anything very, very exciting and not doing anything that's very, very depressing, or not experiencing excitement or something pleasurable or something that's not pleasurable. All right? You're learning to become more tranquil. You're learning to become more at ease with yourself. And you're learning to spend more time in emotional states and learning to spend more time in an emotional state that we ordinarily would call boring. Right? So why is it that some people avoid meditation? Think, why is it that we are so deeply uncomfortable with the idea of sitting in silence? Why is it that we are so uneasy with the idea of being alone with ourselves? Why is it that some of us have so much trouble meditating on our breath for just 5 minutes without our minds wandering all over the place? If you think back to how, if you, let's say you do participate in JP's Mindful Morning Meditation series, if you think back to week 1, and when meditation was 5 minutes, 10 minutes, Think to how your mind ran all over the place, the monkey mind ran all over the place, looking for something to distract from the pain, from the boredom, from the feeling like you are not being productive, from the feeling like you've got something else you should be doing, from the feeling that you're not being constructive. Think, why is it that we have so much problem at just being with ourselves, at just being quiet or sitting in silence? Why are we so uneasy and so uncomfortable with that? And then think, is because some people find that process so uncomfortable or so uneasy, that becomes a process that they try to avoid, that they put down, that they think is useless, that they think no point doing, meditate, sit there, do for what, it's so unproductive. But if you think about it, is there evidence for the benefits of meditation? Is meditation, which appears like you're doing nothing, can meditation be productive? The answer is yes, it can be. Why? Because if you look at people who have meditated for many, many years, if you look at, for example, the old monks, do you see old monks who engage in meditations and they engage in it properly without trying to rush through it? Do you see old monks being plagued by the level and the sense of discontent and dissatisfaction that all of us experience? Do you see old monks trying to run here or there looking for new and exciting things? Do you see old monks looking for things to try and distract them? Do you see them swinging from emotional highs to emotional lows? Do you see them being plagued by boredom? Do you see old monks who meditate always chasing for something new and novel like we do? Or do you see them being okay with what they have, knowing that everything else that they have, or knowing that everything else that they observe is just a fleeting experience? All right, so clearly meditating consistently with intent for many years, clearly renunciation does have its benefits. It may appear at the time that whilst we're meditating, we look like we're doing nothing, but over time, if we do it properly, it is productive, it has benefits, because you get to live a life that isn't plagued by boredom, where you're not constantly craving or chasing for something new, or trying to do something to appear like you're doing something exciting and new. All right? So when you meditate, you investigate your boredom, and you investigate the sense of, or the level, experience of fatigue that comes with it, all right, that we don't like. Meditate on that, which I think JP will go into in a few weeks' time when he goes into contemplative meditation. But look into the underlying agitation, the underlying edginess that you are experiencing, or the underlying vulnerability that you're experiencing, the vulnerability that you appear to be not doing. You appear to be not very successful because you're not doing as many exciting things or as many pleasurable or desirable things as your friends, right? Why is it important to meditate? It's important to meditate because by practicing meditation, we learn to be at ease with ourselves. But at the same time, if we avoid meditation, what we're actually doing is we're avoiding the feeling of being agitated, we're avoiding the feeling of being edgy or being vulnerable, which then we become less tolerable to over time. And so, because we become less tolerable to it, we don't recognize it, we don't recognize the underlying mechanics or the underlying basis of our boredom, that we become less tolerable to it, and so that agitation or that feeling or that vulnerability or that edginess grows over time. All right, so an analogy that I read about online actually is car mechanics. And it's funny because I posted something about car mechanics on my Facebook this morning. But car mechanics, the example that was used was that car mechanics will often leave an engine running on idle because they want to see if any problems arise. They want to see how it runs when it's on neutral state. So when you meditate and you sit and you examine yourself, you're putting yourself in neutral. You're taking yourself or removing yourself away from a situation where you have highs and when you have lows, and you're just sitting and you're just, as they say, you're just being. All right? And so if you do the same thing with your minds by meditating, and just look at what is there. Just look at how your mind behaves, how your mind operates, how your mind reacts. Then you will see that, again, meditation is actually just a bunch of tingling sensations and a bunch of energy that's running through our body. And so that will then help you also to redirect your energy towards something that's more positive. For example, by focusing on other people or benefiting other people rather, all right? When you meditate, try to get away, don't try to get away from the boredom, but give it attention. So observe the energy, observe the boredom, investigate the boredom, investigate where it arises from, and try to avoid our natural tendency, our natural habit, or natural inclination to judge our boredom as being good or bad, or as being positive or negative, or as being dreadful or destructive, and so on. All right, just observe the boredom and observe what the boredom feels like for you. Does it feel like something that's very, very big, confusing, wild? Does it feel like something that has an underlying basis of insecurity, that you're not doing something as exciting as everybody else? Does it have an underlying feeling of vulnerability, that you don't appear to be progressing or as successful as everybody else? Or does your boredom arise from an underlying sense of loneliness? Does your boredom arise when you're with other people? Or does your boredom arise when you're alone? Does your boredom arise from a sense of impatience about what is happening around you? So when you figure out the variables for what triggers your boredom, or what contributes to your sense of boredom through meditation, when you figure out, when you recognize and acknowledge it through meditation, that then gives you an opportunity to address and to work on those triggers, or to work on those habituations or reactions, or like I said, variables that will contribute to or develop or trigger that sense of boredom. All right? Excuse me. So if you have an experience and it elicits very extreme feelings of joy or extreme sadness, observe where those feelings come from, and then observe where those feelings disappear to. That's why when JP talks in his meditation sessions, and he talks about all the thoughts that arise in our minds when we're trying to distract ourselves from meditation, he says, observe the thought and then let it go. Observe it and then let it go. Observe it, examine, see where it comes from, and then let it go. Don't hang on to it. Don't cling on to it. All right? And don't get swept away by it. Because when the highs and lows are gone, and when there's nothing left, when the excitement and the depression are gone, there's nothing left, that's when boredom sets in. And realize that, like every other feeling that we find unpleasant or pleasant, that boredom is just like any other feeling like that. And therefore it is impermanent. So it is a feeling that will pass. And so when you're able to sit there in the boredom, observe it, analyze it, and then let it go, and you practice doing that over and over again, then you eventually become very practiced and very used to observing your boredom, but not becoming boredom-led. Therefore, not being influenced by your boredom in order to seek distraction, in order to mindlessly consume information, in order to waste time. All right. So meditation as a tool for constructively approaching boredom is very, very helpful, because it helps you to understand where it is your boredom arises from, what triggers it, and allows you to practice observing it and then letting it go, realizing that boredom, as well as any other emotion or any other feeling that we experience, is impermanent, and therefore it's a feeling that will pass, and a feeling that we don't need to attend to or feed energy into. All right. So I can see from the time, the clock, that we have exceeded 1 hour. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to leave me a comment in the live stream, and I'll get to that as soon as possible. Something slightly different this week. A few people in KFR have been having some health scares. So if I can make a request to you guys to please offer your prayers, and to please dedicate your prayers to the people who are sick and who are in need of healing, and who are experiencing some health obstacles at the moment. Please offer prayers and dedicate to those people. All right. Before I go, very quickly, just want to ask you guys to think and to reflect on your past week. Have there been moments when you have caught yourself mindlessly scrolling through your phone or mindlessly scrolling through the internet, as so many of us often have done? Have you found yourself doing that? All right. And when you were bored, what did you do in order to distract yourself from your boredom? And as we move into this new week, think, when those situations arise again, is there a way that I can be more constructive in distracting myself from my boredom, more beneficial in distracting myself from my boredom, or can I put in a little more time? Can I set aside a little more time for me to consistently practice meditation this week, every day, 5-10 minutes every day, in order to develop my ability to become at ease with my neutral state? All right. So as we move into the new week, please think about that. All right. Just quickly before I go, a couple of reminders for the upcoming programs. So tonight on the Kechara Facebook fan page, there is the Doju Shukden Sadhana at 10 p.m. And then on Tuesday at 9:30, there is the Easy Dharma for New Normal on the Kechara Facebook page with Pastor David. And then on Thursday at 8 p.m, there's Semramrichi's Swift Return Puja. All right, that will be live streamed on the Kecharans and Friends Facebook group. And then, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this sharing, Pets Day Out on the 11th of October at Kechara Forest Retreat. So all pets are welcome. Please make sure they're leashed. And as usual, you guys can go anywhere. There'll be pet feeding station, picnic place, passes pet blessings. Can't wait to see all your dogs and cats. That'll be happening on the 11th of October. All right. And if you guys would like to start volunteering or start contributing to the Stupa project, please contact Karen, because we already are in need of volunteers and hands to roll mantras. All right. So that's it from me for today. Thank you so much for joining me on this Sunday. Yeah, like I said, if you guys have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section of this live stream, and then I will do my best to answer them. Okay. And don't forget to do your dedications. Don't forget to do your prayers. And please, as I mentioned, as I requested, please do dedicate prayers to people who are experiencing health obstacles in Kechara Forest Retreat at the moment. All right. And again, thank you so much to the sponsors who have contributed and who have made this sharing possible, and who made all our online sharings possible, and made it possible for us to convey and to share the knowledge that Rinpoche so compassionately gave to us for so many years. All right. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys same time, same place next week here on the Kechara Facebook fan page. Have a good weekend. Have a good week, and bye guys.